So now we'll begin the panel discussion question and answer period. I'd ask the three speakers to come and join me on stage along with the four panelists. Our four panelists are Don Bartusiak, Dave Emerson, Greg Bouchard, and as Jaco mentioned, Robert Whitaker of Shell. He gave you the easy job, I guess. He'll answer anything. So what I would ask, we already met the speakers, so I'd ask the panelists, maybe beginning with Greg, just to briefly introduce yourself, what your role is in your firm and what your firm does, and keep that very brief, but just introduce yourself to the audience, please.
Yeah. So, hello everybody, my name is Greg Bucco. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer for Universal Automation Network. Universal Automation Network just been created in November 2021, and the goal of this organization is to share and collaborate around the runtime based on the 64099 standard, amongst with vendors, with users, universities, and startups.
Good afternoon, I'm Bob Whitaker. I'm the one that I need to pay back to Jaco. I'm the principal technical expert within the corporate instrumentation control and electrical group within Shell. And I look after a variety of technologies across those disciplines. Thanks.
I'm Dave Emerson with Yokogawa. Yokogawa is global lead for OPA, process automation. And we're fortunate to be able to work with ExxonMobil and Shell, Petronas, and others to build up our OPA SI business. Thank you.
And I'm Don Bartusiak, and currently founder and president of Collaborative Systems Integration, CSI for short, which Snorri referenced earlier. Thank you, Snorri. Our business is to provide technology and systems integration services for OPAS-based systems. Our second line of business is developing control software products, again, targeting OPAS, the OPAS marketplace. And I will also represent the Coalition for Open Process Automation in this panel.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, I have questions, but I'm sure you do. So I'd ask if anybody has a question, raise your hand, identify yourself, and ask the question. Don't be shy. I don't think anybody's too shy here. Okay, well, I'm not intimidated, so I'm going to ask one if nobody else does, because I had some. Going, gone. Okay, Ryan. I'd like to ask two questions. Maybe you can answer them. And what so far from this field trial project do you consider to be your major learnings? And how has the test bed that you have developed over the last year specifically helped you with this project so far?
Yeah, I think maybe I'll address that in maybe reverse order, Harry. You know, I think, again, talked a lot about the test bed during my presentation. I think the key learnings there are obviously it still is white space in the standards. So we recognize, the standards being developed by the forum are good, but they're not complete. And that's why we continue to participate in the forum with others, they talked about to fill in some of that white space. So in particular, different uses of OPC UA I would highlight is an area that's maturing but still has some progress to go. There's some discussion earlier in the autonomous section about the pub sub in particular as an area I think that's evolving and needs to cover some more ground. So that's the type of aspects you get into, right, when you start getting hands-on with the kit, hands-on with the protocols, and you get beyond like kind of the white paper design type criteria. And I think as it relates to the field trial, the learnings, we're still early, right? We're still in the front-end engineering design of that project. Obviously, making sure that we can understand and align with our business, in particular, in this case, one of our chemicals manufacturing facilities in Baton Rouge that we're working with, understanding how we're going to deliver value that's going to materialize on their bottom line, right? And so not a key learning per se unique to OPA, but making sure that they understand what's the technology risk that's involved, but then ultimately what's the technology benefit and how to manage that value to risk type proposition with the business.
Okay, thank you. Again, looking for a question from the audience. Oh, Alex, go right ahead.
Soon as there we go. One of the things, as a worker bee on the OPAP stuff, editor of a couple of sections, we could use more hands on deck. So what can we do to encourage people to participate more actively? Not that I'm looking at you, Snorri, but I haven't had a lot of Equinor calls on my calls.
Buy that one. Yeah.
But what can we do?
I take it as a company from Europe. I
Just
think.
speak up really loud. I
Okay, I try to sit closer down. As a company from Europe, I think we need to be more accessible in Europe, make it much easier for a European country to attend and start digging into this stuff. Though I think the COVID situation have made it difficult the last couple of years. Though we had some plans to engage more, but it hasn't been easy. So. But I think it's important to also get the liaisons with Namur and OPC and so on more engaged also, because they are based in Europe. So together work to get in the same direction, I think is important.
There's some other comments from panelists here on that topic. I welcome anything if you want to add to that.
I can add to that. From a Shell perspective, Jakob Mir is certainly front and center in terms of our leadership. I support him as well as other members in the audience. But as our test plan progresses, we're certainly going to be ramping up our resources and involvement in the initiative. And that's a challenge because the right skilled resources to be able to go hands-on in this kind of environment is not plentiful. So it's a challenge for us.
They have day jobs.
Yes, as do you, I think. Okay, there's a question from the floor of there. If you would please stand up and identify yourself and ask your question. Thank you.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so my name is Drew Ainscoe. I work for Chevron as a control systems engineer. And so my question is about the vendors that would be supplying the technology that's here. I know that there's some vendors that are fully on board, like Yoko and others. But what about those vendors that are kicking and dragging along the way? And what do you guys see as how do we get them more on board? And how do we know kind of what the bellwether is when that tipping point is that we know that this is critical mass and we're going to be getting to what we want to actually be accomplishing? What are you guys thinking that's going to look like? Thanks.
Okay, who wants to take those? I think maybe an end user might be better to take that to begin with. I don't know if you do have some dealings in your company with vendors that are not part of the OPAP, so maybe you can comment on that, Ryan.
Sure, I think money talks, obviously, right? So from an end user perspective, you're the demand, right? And so I think part of that is having the open dialogue, doing things like having an active R&D program over multiple years where you foster engagement. And ultimately, not everyone's going to come along as part of the party, right? And so I think what really speaks is where the money's going to show up, right, for your next set of automation investments. And folks, when we get to the point where we're saying we're technically ready and commercially ready with OPA based on our learnings in both the R&D program and field trial projects, that's going to be incorporated in our procurement standards, our MIC and MAX strategies, and ultimately the folks that don't show up with OPAS conformant products potentially won't get any business, right? And so, I mean, it's so part of it is creating that tension where we actually get the seeds planted for a marketplace so we can get that supply-demand equation moving, right? And so that's really what a field trial from an ExxonMobil perspective is all about, is planting those seeds, learning, and moving forward.
Snorri, I wonder if you have some comments on that. I don't know your incumbent vendors, but maybe you could talk about the situation.
But what I see from the European side is that, of course, we have all vendors which we have a close cooperation with, and we have for decades. we have developed together, and I see positive responses from them in this respect. I see also new suppliers coming up, eager to attend this market and be a part of it. So I will not say it's totally dark. I would say it's promising, and I'm looking forward to the continuation of it. But because, as I said, it's 4 or 5 years ago we took in the MDIS companion standard into our requirements, and then we already has our vendors developed OPC UA clients in the controllers now. And we have running plans doing that, and with the interface towards the subsea controls. So it's doing it step by step, component by component, so we will get there. So, but then you have the speed. How fast is this transformation go?
Go ahead, Bob.
So let me just add to that from our perspective. At the beginning of our OPA journey, we recognized the need for alignment within our own company. Right, we had a wide variety of opinions all over the place, and so through a stakeholder mapping initiative, we utilized a number of tools to work on that alignment. One of them was a SWOT analysis, and that directly goes back to Jacques' question, like one of the risks is what if you don't get involved in the OPAP initiative? And so we actually worked on a SWOT initiative that would help us get aligned internally. And then we took that out to each of our strategic suppliers and tested where they were on that, right? And so in the early journey that we're on, we've chosen to work with those that are most aligned with the OPA standards and moving forward with that.
Sure.
If it's live. There is something that's very simple that vendors, that end users could do. If you would simply write into your RFQs that they should explain the OPAF roadmap that they're following, that puts the pressure on them. They have to at least answer the question. Maybe they make it up from whole cloth, but you got it on a piece of paper saying that they're going to do something. And that's real important, and it's real easy. Just whatever your RFQ form is, work with the people that issue them and get a couple of questions added to it to cover OPAF involvement. How are they involved? What's their roadmap? You'd be surprised at how impactful that is,
Yeah,
by the way.
suppliers always dream of writing RFQs instead of answering them. Yeah. Been there. Okay, other questions from the floor? We have time for one or two more. I see one over here.
There's one over here, too.
Go ahead.
Hi, Heinz Romari from Dow.
Okay, please speak a little louder into the microphone.
Heinz Romari from Dow. So I would like to ask, are there any plans to include safety systems into the scope of open process automation?
Okay, we have both the chairs, I think, of the OPAF here, so go ahead.
Yeah, so when we chartered the Open Process Automation Forum in 2016 and 2017, we on purpose, a conscious decision, excluded safety instrumented systems from the scope of the OPAS standard. That doesn't mean we didn't recognize the need to interface to SISs, but to think that the scope of the OPAS spec would embrace inside of it the SIS was out of scope, because we adhered strictly to the interpretation of IEC 61511. I might get the numbers slightly mixed up, which calls for strict separation of the BPCS and the SIS, and that was the rationale for our decision.
But it's coming in version 4, isn't it? Huh?
This is news.
Question mark.
Okay, there was another question over here in the back. Could you
Hello, sure. Yeah, my
ask the
name is
question?
Ramses.
Go ahead.
My name is Ramses Brugge, Dow. I see a lot of new technologies being used in this OPAF, a new IT technologies, and I was wondering, do you see a change in the required skills and competencies of your personnel rolling out this standard?
Okay, anybody can take that.
Maybe I'll-
Dave, if you want to go, go ahead.
We've been experiencing that. There's as the IT technologies come in, as we saw, the last 10 years, so virtualization, new skills came in. We're seeing a lot more. Orchestration is a big concept that's coming in. Many ways to do that. Kubernetes we're using now, and there's a lot of potential in that. We're fortunate with ExxonMobil to be partnering with Intel and VMware and Dell, and we're learning a lot from that cooperation. And Schneider's part of that too. And you'll see some of that if you go to the reception later after this. But there is a lot, but that is part of the progress. And one thing we really see is the young people that we bring on the project, that enthuses them much more than many different things we've seen. So it's actually a plus, especially to bring in the younger skills, the younger professionals, and they view these as skills they want to get. So I think it's a positive thing in that respect.
Anyone else have a comment on that? May have a time for one more if somebody else wants to go in. Franco, go ahead.
I actually think this is one of the biggest hurdles to have this technology coming on field at the moment. Because I think that, let's say, the basis is there to be used, but putting all these elements together in something which is robust enough to be usable in our plants requires skills which almost nobody has. So we are in a sort of a chicken and the egg problem where we want to push the usage of the technology. We basically know how it should appear, but then finding people to implement that idea is actually hard. I mentioned before the problem of system integrator, software developer for the control part, but it is not just that. How do you design the communication infrastructure for such a plant? In concrete terms, I mean, the moment you go on field, you have requirements, you want to have a plant. How do you best design the set of databases to host data coming out from the field? How do you implement the communication protocol between the OT and the IT? And how do you put all of that together while you are also designing the plant? So where are the people actually doing their job? And I'm not talking about one person in a project. I'm talking about teams of people. So I think that at the moment, at least for us, where the timeline is not that huge for the first plant to arrive on the market, but also for you. I mean, I saw 2025 in your slide, so it's not that much. So that I think is going to be one of the biggest issues to solve in the short term.
Okay, thank you very much. We're 2 minutes over time, so I'm going to call this to a close. I really thank the panel very much. Let's give them a round of applause.